And now it's time for Advantage India. It's a special series on the rising stature of India. Today we'll talk about the economy. Every second headline mentions recession. The world is staring at one, but India has emerged as a bright spot. And in the weeks and months ahead, India is expected to be the driver of global economy. As we gear up for the annual budget, here's a look at how India has beaten the global trend. Meet Gareth Thomas. He's a member of the British Parliament. He wants school students in the UK to be taught Indian languages like Gujarati, Bengali, Punjabi and Urdu. A British MP wants students to learn Indian languages. Do you know why? So that they can engage with India. He wants them to be able to engage with India because he says India will be the next economic powerhouse.
Given the global significance of the Indian economy in years to come, it seems even sadder that we are seeing a decline in the teaching of languages of modern India, in Gujarati, Bengali, Persian, Punjabi and Urdu. If we want to take, as a country, the full benefit of the trade deal that we're hoping to see done with India going forward, actually having people who can speak the languages of that great country.
And it's not just politicians. Economic experts are also optimistic. Here's what a top UN economist said recently. India is a bright spot in the world economy. This is the assessment of Hamid Rashid. He works at the Department of Economic and Social Affairs at the United Nations. His confidence in India stems from two reasons. Number one is inflation. India is being able to control it. And number two, low import bills, especially when it comes to energy. New Delhi has managed expenses carefully. Prime Minister Modi spoke about it recently.
Friends, the IMF sees India as a bright spot in the global economy. The World Bank says that India is in a better position to deal with global headwinds than many other countries.
Agencies like the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank endorse India. And the contrast with the rest of the world is stark. The global economy is in a slump. The war in Ukraine is fueling fears of recession. China is unable to shake off the Wuhan virus. The United States is barreling towards a government shutdown. The United Kingdom faces the worst recession in the G7. The Japanese economy shrank last year. But here's the projection for India. The World Bank says the Indian economy has demonstrated resilience despite a challenging environment. So what makes India stand out? How did it become an exception to the global slump? A few factors have worked to India's advantage. First of all, the strong pandemic recovery. There were no major lockdowns last year. Economic activity resumed and remained largely uninterrupted. For the West, the war in Ukraine dealt a huge blow, but India was able to absorb the shock. And this was thanks to India's domestic consumption, private or household consumption. It makes up about 60% of India's GDP, 60% of the GDP. The money you and I spend drives growth. And this spending has been on the rise. It has helped the economy. So next time you joke that you're shopping to help the economy, you're not wrong. Last month, India's tax collections also jumped. This is GST we're talking about, the goods and services tax. The collection went up by 15%. How much money are we talking about here? A little over $18 billion. Why is rising tax collection significant? Because it means strong economic activity. So that's one thing that is working in favor of India. The second one is decoupling from China. The world is doing it. Businesses are deleveraging, meaning they're building alternatives. They're implementing what they call a China plus one strategy. Meaning if you have a Chinese partner, you'll engage with them, but you'll also cultivate a non-Chinese company, a non-Chinese partner. That's the China plus one strategy. You see, the world is actively diversifying its supply chains, and there are compelling reasons to do this. The authoritarianism of Xi Jinping, the frequent crackdowns on business owners in China, erratic policies, trade wars, a shrinking workforce. China is becoming more unreliable by the day, so global businesses are shifting away, and all of this is helping India. I have some examples. Last year, Apple started making its new iPhones in India. Apple engages with many manufacturers to make the iPhone, and these companies are looking to expand their operations in India. More than a dozen such companies are ready to divert production from China. Then we have Samsung, another smartphone giant. It makes 120 million units every year. 120 million in India every year. Tech giant Google is also considering the switch. Semiconductor manufacturers are eyeing India. Taiwan's Foxconn has joined hands with India's Vedanta. They've announced a joint venture. They want to set up semiconductor plants in India. Chip makers from Taiwan are also looking to work with India. I could go on, but you get the picture. India is emerging as the go-to destination for global businesses. And this is not to say that there are no hiccups, but the trend looks promising. The third factor is domestic investment. Some of India's biggest conglomerates are pumping money into key sectors. They're being lured by government subsidies. New Delhi is encouraging manufacturing in 14 key industries. The list includes electronics, drones, drugs, and batteries. Companies are taking advantage of these opportunities. They're helping India sustain a high level of growth. Here's an assessment by Morgan Stanley. It's an investment management company, and this is what it says. India is on track to become the world's third largest economy by 2027. This is an assessment by Morgan Stanley. India could surpass Japan and Germany in 4 years. This report makes a forecast. It says India will have the world's third largest stock market by 2030. This is thanks to investments being made in technology and energy. S&P Global has a similar assessment. It says India will overtake Japan and Germany and that Indian households will become the greatest spenders among the G20. In fact, India's G20 presidency this year can open up fresh opportunities for the economy. But there are things that India needs to watch out for. What are the risks? First is the fiscal deficit. That's the difference between expenses and earnings. When a government spends more than it earns, it ends up with a budget deficit. What is India's fiscal deficit right now? A little over 6%. That's according to one estimate. And there is a need to bring that down. Expenses need to be watched closely. The second risk is, of course, the global uncertainty. The war in Ukraine is far from over. Western powers want to pressurize Russia. They want to cap Moscow's earnings from oil. India is going to have to be cautious about all of this, about any attempts to cut supplies, because that would adversely impact India's energy procurements. And despite all of this, a lot is going well for the Indian economy. Connect the dots and you'll see that it is indeed Advantage India.